that's very good because that is a part of their, well, of course, well, very important education, listening to you. Because, well, now, well, I'll introduce you in 1 minute.
Yeah, sure. There's no rush. I'm just trying
All right. Well,
to organise.
probably we could start. Well, do you mind I was starting right now? No, it is okay. May I
Yeah,
introduce? Yes.
just give me a minute. Yeah, I'm just
All
trying
right.
to
So, well, good morning, everybody who has arrived to our talk. Well, I'm greatly honored to introduce to you, well, one of the outstanding scholars of our time in the English language, and his name is Wayne Rimmer. At the moment, he's a professor and a doctor of linguistics at Manchester University. And he has written quite a number of books, and he has given a number of talks to our students before the pandemic. So it is not the first time that we're going to listen to him. Well, one of the topical questions of today is really with so many dialects and so many different accents in Britain. What is considered to be really the standard, standard English? What is considered to be something that should be followed, that should be imitated? Well, that is something probably that is the question, well, will be answered today, well, in that talk. And so we are greatly, greatly obliged to you that you have decided to give us a talk. And thank you very much, Wayne. And that is my pleasure to introduce you, Wayne Rimmer. So as I said already, an outstanding scholar in today's linguistics. Thank you, Wayne. And I'm giving you the floor. Yes, please.
Yeah,
Wayne,
thank you.
Yes, please.
Thank you for that introduction there. Can I just check? I've not used this platform before. I usually use Teams or Zoom. Can you just write in the chat box if you can hear me? Just write yes or not very well or whatever. Just want to do a little sound check to make sure you can hear. Just write in the chat box, yes, no, could be better. I'll just wait, just write a little message in the chat box, that'd be nice. Just so I can hear if you can hear me. I can't see anyone writing the chat box, but is the chat box working? Okay. Maybe someone could write in the chat box. Hello, can you hear me okay? Oh dear.
Well, Wayne, I'm sorry, this sound is far from being perfect. Will you please, stabilize it somehow?
Yeah, I just want to check if, I'm just not sure if people can hear me. I'm asking people to write in the chat box. Natalia, can you just ask the students if they can hear me? Because I'm not sure they can. If they can't hear me, I don't know if people can hear me or not. I'm not getting any response.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, Nastya, thank you. Yeah. I just couldn't. Nastya, is the sound okay, Nastya? Is the sound okay? Okay, I think I'll.
Well, there are some problems to the sound, but still we can hear you. That's all.
Okay, thank you. That's good. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, as I said, I'm going to be talking today in my presentation about standard English and various challenges to it. I don't really have a solution to these problems. It's just going to be quite an overview, really. A lot of it will be me talking, but do feel free. I mean, at the end, there'll be time for questions, and I'll give my email, and you can ask a few things. I'm going to show a PowerPoint presentation, and I'll make it available afterwards as well. Yeah, just a few words about myself, as Professor Natalia said.
Sorry to say, but there is something wrong with the sound. Well, it doesn't. It doesn't come to us at all times very well. Well, sometimes it is very hard to understand what you're saying. So please stabilize it somehow or other.
Natalia, we could try a different platform like Teams or Zoom. Maybe it's the platform, actually. Could you ask the students, Natalia, if they can hear me?
Well, we can see you very well, and we can hear you. But sometimes...
If you can't hear me, this is not going to work. Yeah. Can you ask students if they can hear me? Because Nastya said, but I don't know the other students. Maybe they could put in the chat box or something.
Yes, we can. There are some problems, but still, I think the majority of us can get what you are talking about. But
Okay.
as for any link, I'd rather to know where we can get it, because we found information about this lecture in the group of our university. So if you decide to change the link, could you clarify where we can find it?
Okay, I'll show you later. Thank you, Nastya, for your help on that. Right, I'm going to show a presentation now. Let's begin. Right, so let me share. Okay. I'm just checking. Right, Nastya, sorry, I'm asking you all the time. Can you see this, Nastya?
Yes, I think everyone can, because
Good.
I see
Okay.
the screen.
Okay, thank you. Right, yeah, do let me know if the sound goes or something like that. Okay, so the questions I'll be talking about today. The first is actually what are we talking about? Let's get our terminology correct. And the other questions really are kind of talking about controversies about standard English, which are very tied into, languages evolving, and also, sorry about this. Yeah, languages evolving, and how we deal with that as learners or teachers. I mean, I know this is not a kind of pedagogical talk, but many of you in the future, may be involved with translation or something relevant. Okay, so I'll just keep going here. So standard English then, what is it? Well, I'm going to use a concept which has been widely used in social linguistics, where you look at the English-speaking world as a series of circles. The inner core would be the Anglophone countries, like the USA, like the UK. So you can see here, I'll give you the references at the end, but this model by Capcrew has been very influential. Obviously, English began in England, but obviously it's become a global language. But as a native in the inner circle, it is in the inner circle. It is associated with the Anglophone countries. So the UK, the USA is the biggest. Australia, and then the outer circle, you've got countries where English is a second language. Obviously, there's a lot of debate about whether somewhere like India is a first or second language, but obviously, India is now the biggest country in the world population-wise, and a lot of people there do speak English. But the vast majority of people are those who speak English as a foreign language. For example, obviously in China, Russia, Mexico, France, whatever. Now that expanding circle, by definition, is getting bigger and bigger. Now standard English is very much associated though with the inner circle, which is not really getting bigger. So the model is widening, but the kind of the core of the apple is staying the same. So standard English is kind of associated with quite a small nucleus of people. By the way, if there's any questions or anything, do chip in. What about Russia? Well, I'm going on the reports, which I'll give you a reference for at the end. The Future of English by the British Council. I do think the methodology of this report can be challenged, but they do give some interesting facts and figures. So they estimate that about 30% of people in Russia speak English. I mean, I don't know. There's lots of these statistics, like. What do they mean to speak English? I mean, there are lots of people who can read English very well, probably can't speak it very well. 30% to me on the low side, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not in Russia. I'm guessing that despite the political situation, most children in Russia learn English at school. I'm guessing, maybe I'm wrong. 30% to me seems a bit on the low side, but this information was taken notice in 2017, so it's not exactly very recent, but yeah, okay. But you look at Sierra Leone, 100% consonant. Anyway, so this is very important with standard English. There is an idea of certain languages correct, and let's call it deviation, which can either be error or some kind of dialect. I've just chosen an example of the word ain't. Obviously, got no time is one way, a standard way of signaling the nation. The double negative is not allowed in English. It's allowed in many languages, but not allowed in English. So I've not got no time would be stigmatized. And then the form ain't is disputed. Disputes are not wrong. Well, if you look in a corpus, and I'm using a kind of, there obviously is corpus, but I use a tool called Sketch Engine. I can give you the reference at the end, which is a kind of like mega corpus, and you can choose them. You can see that there's lots of concordance lines for ain't, so it's definitely testified. Obviously, quite casual, not academic speech, but definitely testified. And also, ain't has a tradition as well. So I've chosen a very prestigious author, which is Dickens, one of my favourite authors. There ain't anything the matter. And I've chosen quite a prestigious newspaper called The Independent. This particular order's work, it ain't broke, so don't fix it. Yeah. So ain't is definitely part of usage, but it's not standard in terms of it kind of falls away from what we consider as correct. And of course, standard English, the great advantage of it as a model is you can see it written down, which is useful for teaching and learning purposes. So these kind of like, like for example, published in the early 2000s, the Ultimate Authority on the Grammar of English by Cambridge University Press. Uses standard grammar. Of course, the Oxford English Dictionary, all 20 volumes of it. That's based on standard English. And the Cambridge Pronunciation Dictionary is descriptive rather than prescriptive. I mean, it will give you the kind of it will give you a kind of range of pronunciations. Pronunciation is a bit more tricky, but my basic point is that standard English has been codified. Okay, I've stopped sharing the nice picture, Camilla. By the way, nice picture. I've shown the. I've stopped sharing this slide. You get the idea now. Any questions at this point? I don't know going on and on and on. So if you've got any questions, please speak up. Or I mean, we can answer in the end. But I'm happy to answer your questions. Probably more people. Okay. Well, I'll press on then because I'll take that people are kind of getting the idea here of what's going on. Okay. Well, when we look at moving on then to what challenges standard English. Obviously, there is change. I mean, no language stays the same, and English does not stay the same. Okay, so just to give you an example, if we have a look at just sorry, I'm just going to show here. Actually, I'm just going to show you again. Bringing this up. Sorry about this. Sorry, I've not used this platform before. So let's get the help up again. Come on. Sorry. So what I'm saying is obviously the change over time, diachronical, and the change happening now as we speak. So just to kind of illustrate some diachronical change. Obviously, this is a very famous poem, the Canterbury Tales, written in Middle English. Now, obviously, the English then is quite different from the English today. So if I take the first line here, in the original, written in the 14th century, and the modern translation, I mean, if you read it, I mean, you know, a lot of the vocabulary, the grammar basically is the same, but it would be quite difficult for someone today to read that without a translation. Okay, and I thought what I'd do, just appreciate, just play those few lines in Middle English. Let me try and do this. I want to be a little bit. I'm just going to play you. How that would sound in Middle English. I'd say it myself, but I don't have a great speaking voice, to be honest. Right, so I'm just going to bear with me a second while I just play this little video for a few seconds about the Canterbury Tales. 1 second. Okay, 1 second.
Excuse me, could you repeat what you have told us? Because honestly speaking, I didn't hear anything at that moment, so I'd like to clarify this moment whether I have missed something essential.
I'm just going to share the presentation now. So,
thank you.
Yeah. So I'm just going to play the opening lines of the Canterbury Tales, so where you can just see that the pronunciation is rather different. 1 second. I'm just searching for the YouTube thing. 1 second. Right. Okay. Okay. Great. Let me share this. It's only a few seconds. Okay, I mean, that was very quick, but you can see my basic points is there are quite, I mean, there have been quite substantial differences between Middle English and contemporary English. But Middle English probably, you know, you could read, if you knew modern English, you could read that and understand it with some difficulty. Old English, of course, is just would be a different language. So that just illustrates their diachronical change. Just going back to my worksheet. Just going back to my presentation now. 1 second. Just flicking between different documents now. Right. Let me go. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So obviously that's diachronical change. How things have changed quite substantially in terms of pronunciation. Mostly in terms of pronunciation. And synchronical change, again, pronunciation is the biggest thing. So I thought I would demonstrate by, if we look at Robinson, grammar has not changed much. So if we look at Robinson Crusoe, which was the first novel in English, well, it depends what you call novel, but many people would agree. But as you can see, although this was written, 100 years ago, the grammar actually has changed very, very little. I'll read it actually. I was born in the year 1632 in the city of York, of a good family, but not of that country. My father being a foreigner of Bremen, the first Paul. Now, I mean, the grammar, I mean, I could read this easily, because the grammar is basically the same. The only slight grammatical issue I would have, the preposition of, I don't think you would use that preposition they, probably would say from a good family. Yeah? And again, not from that country. But the grammar is basically the same. So grammar actually remains very stable. And it's vocabulary and vocabulary and pronunciation which are driving things really. So if you look at just some example of vocabulary which changes very, very frequently, here are some words you may or may not be familiar with. These are words which have come into the English language in the 21st century, or at least been codified in the 21st century. So we have the verb befriend, 2004. So, you know, you've got a contact on Facebook or Instagram, you don't like them anymore, so you defend them. We have an adverb, totes, which is basically a form of totally, which basically means very. That's from the say 10 years ago. And then, this is my best word actually, we have this verb declutter. Yeah, so basically when you decide there's too much in your life, could be physical things, could be abstract things, and then you decide to remove them. It's quite a common word these days actually. So this person here is decluttering their flat. They're deciding what they can keep, what they can donate, and what they just need to throw out. Yeah. So my basic point is vocabulary is changing all the time. The Oxford English Dictionary, every year they're putting new words in there. The pace is extraordinary. Not with grammar. With grammar, they're not running new tenses or anything like that. And of course, pronunciation, yeah, this is the at the forefront of change. This is the first thing that's affected. So yeah, just a few points here. I mean, this has always been a factor actually of English. So it's not like things have accelerated now, although globalization is possible. There's always been a lot of variation in pronunciation. Yeah, interesting facts about received pronunciation, which is obviously very strongly associated with standard English. It is very marginal, so very few people speak it, and it's not something which is kind of you can find. But where can I find RP speakers? It's not like I go to Oxford and no, I mean some people in Oxford probably speak it, but I mean there's actually an Oxford accent, which is quite different. So. But the point is actually that number's probably getting kind of is going down and down actually as well. So a prestige accent may be, but in terms of actual volume of people speaking it, it's very low. And also, if you go back to the circle model, that's a circle. So the actual number of people globally who speak RP is a tiny percentage. Yeah, and as I referred to before, obviously the fact that English has gone around the world, it's just kind of like emphasizing variation now, particularly pronunciation. So a few words about accents. A colleague of mine in Manchester, Alex Barata, very interesting article actually. I'll give you the reference for it later. But you're linguist, so you know if you look at it kind of like phonetically, there is no kind of value judgments on how people are pronouncing things. It's just a categorical thing. So you have people use one set of phonemes in one location, one set of phonemes in other locations. Linguistically, it's got nothing to do with how you kind of evaluate that accent, although people do. So let's have a little speech experiment now. I'm just going to give you a minute to think about this. I won't ask you to do it, but can you just try and kind of, I won't deliberately, I'm not going to read it, but could you try and like pronounce that yourself? How would you say that? Okay. Now, if we kind of like unpack that sentence, you will see that, first of all, with data, I could say data, it's more like data, that flapping, that kind of that flapping phenomenon. So data and data, yeah, two variations there. When we look at the number, which could be a pronoun, could be a determiner, you've got most people would say one, some would say one, yeah. Variation there. And then further variation with how you pronounce this. Issue, yeah, say that again. Issue, yeah, okay. So the most popular there is issue. Now, it's important with these percentages. This is not about what is right or wrong. I'm not saying that you should say issue because that's most people say that. I mean, these percentages don't change. It just shows that there is a variation here. And you can get situations where there are multiple different pronunciations. So this word here, phonologists have recorded 9 different pronunciations, going from a very careful, actually, a very full pronunciation, to actually. So actually, and then the most informal, actually. So a soundscape, 9 different soundscapes have been found for this word. Yeah, which is obviously a challenge for listening. As for the future, well, what does the future hold here, actually? It's hard to predict. But again, going back to that British Council report, again, I think you can question methodology here, but they are saying that the kind of that inner core is very much still seen as a standard around the world. However, the fact that there is considerable variation and globalization, that is kind of influencing the standards people learn, how people speak, and how. I mean, remember that the vast majority of interaction in English is between non-native speakers, yeah? So, like someone from Brazil speaking to someone from China. That is a typical situation. I mean, very often we can train our learners as if they're going to kind of be speaking a lot with people from America or England. They might do, but that's not the typical situation. The typical situation in Rome, someone from, I don't know, St. Petersburg going on holiday to Turkey and speaking to a Turkish hotel receptionist. That's a very typical scenario, and that's how English is being used around the world. So, going on then to a few implications. You know, I say for teachers, but even if you're not interested in teaching, I think this does affect everyone actually. The first is that even if we kind of are not very interested in different Englishes being spoken around the world, I think you need to train students to at least understand and cope with different accents and different dialects. If they're only good kind of, you know, understanding RP and standard English, they're going to struggle speaking to that person from Brazil. So even if they don't use if they don't use anything other than standard English themselves, they've got to be good at listening and coping with different varieties of English. That's just the reality. That's just a socio-linguistic reality. We can't really change that. Yeah, so I do think a lot of people are kind of, I've got examples here. The kind of English people are learning at school, like, you know, English. I think people are going to move to kind of like things like business English, English for academic purposes, English for occupational purposes. That's going to become more useful than just some kind of like, general kind of, learning about travel and learning about the supernatural and things. Yeah. So people are going to be learning English for quite specific kind of like niches, really. I mean, personally, I teach English for academic purposes, which is very different from the kind of English people learn at school, where it's going to focus on, here's some vocabulary, here's some grammar, here's some pronunciation. So I've got a lesson today where we're focusing on, on academic writing, because they need to, being in England, they need to write academic essays. So we're focusing on that. We're not doing anything on speaking. We don't need it. I mean, it's quite controversial. Authentic is. I would call authentic anything which is not designed for a classroom. So, a textbook, a course book is not authentic because it's been designed for people in English. However, a newspaper would be authentic because the purpose of the newspaper is not to teach people English. A poster would be authentic. Yeah. A YouTube video would be authentic. They're better input in terms of they do reflect the changing landscape of English and variation and different norms. Of course, they're challenging because there's lots of issues with the level. Can beginners with them, and also as well, to be frank, there's a lot of bad English out there, especially on the internet. So you've got to filter this. But I do think authentic material, such as literature, such as some newspapers, can be very useful in exposing people to, I won't say real English, because I think that's kind of a bit of an arrogant term, but the kind of, just the variety and the richness of English language out there. I do think we need to get people working with authentic materials as quickly as possible. Okay. There's a few useful references there, actually. The last one, the British Council publication, I do think the methodology can be questioned there, but it does say a lot of interesting things about just the kind of forces that are challenging English at the moment. So I recommend that. So I mean, if you want, I guess we make available this. We can make internally a copy of this spreadsheet. But if you want to write to me, or get some information, you can do. I can send you this. I thought we'd. So I'll stop sharing now. Actually, sorry, I have a few problems there. It's a bit difficult with a new platform. I can't write in the chat box for some reason, but if you want to, we've got a lot of time now. I've got to shoot off later. I've got to teach academic English, but if you've got any questions you want to ask, we went through that pretty quickly, and
well,
any more to say on it.
Hey,
Yeah, sorry.
Well, I think we don't have any question at the moment, but we'd like to clarify where we can find the link.
Sorry, the link to what, though?
I've got a question. I am sorry. Well, if somebody probably will think of some question, but at the moment I'm going to ask this question. Well, you said, it's quite right that there are a lot of Indian or Pakistani families who have settled down in Britain. And of course, their influence is very substantial. Influence on standard English. And from the point of view of Lexis, that is obvious. And from the point of view of standard English pronunciation, for example, how much do you think, we can measure up this particular influence that they have brought into the country with their arrival from those countries? Well, those Pakistani families and Indian families, I know that they live in groups and in national groups, and they speak their own languages, but at the same time, of course, they go to the same schools as all the English children of the parents who were born in England. So, how much is the influence really substantial? To what degree, really, is it considered to be really important on the standard English. Well, I mean, because, well, since they will, of course, bring into their school and, well, and they speak, well, their own languages, and, well, because they keep to their groups, well, that's national groups. That's important, I think. And well, what about the influence that they have on standard English?
I think it'd be difficult to measure because obviously that's not the only. I mean, there are, like, if you go to like big cities, I mean, in a classroom, there's lots and lots of people from different nationalities who have got, I mean, actually, the second most common language in England now is Polish, actually. So it's quite difficult to measure the individual effects of these different languages on standard English. I suspect because the languages are so different, not very much. I mean, for example, English is stress times. A lot of Indian languages, I think, are syllable times. So I don't think there's going to be a tendency for English to become syllable times. I do think, though, it raises this question like multilingualism. I mean, the government are quite keen to support. So the reality is there's lots of different languages going on in the environment and kind of supporting each other. So those kids, I mean, they may be speaking English at school because English is the kind of, it's not an official language. English is not an official language, actually. We don't have an official language, but they will be speaking that language at school because all the materials are in English, and that just makes sense. But when they get home, yes, they may be speaking heritage language, Hindi or whatever, and maybe code switching. So it's a good question. Just to go back to Nasty's question, we'll make the PowerPoint available somewhere, or you could write me something. Yeah. Any more questions, or people want time?
Well, yes, please. Well, another question, if you please. Well, what about the BBC English? Because in the past years, it has been greatly varied. Well, from one speaker to another speaker. The news readers who appear on the BBC, sometimes they differ substantially from the point of view of their pronunciation. They come from different parts of Great Britain, and at the same time, somehow or other, their influence is really absolutely obvious in the BBC English. Well, how much is it really important, and what kind of influence do they? Well, what about that variations that you have got for the past years in the BBC English?
I mean, the BBC now are quite big on diversity, so they will have a lot of speakers from different countries. So someone may be born in Kenya and now they work for the BBC. So I'm actually here on the BBC today, just install the BBC World Service. After this lesson's finished, go and just listen to something on the BBC World Service. You will hear people speaking English, the presenters, who obviously have come from quite different backgrounds. So don't think the BBC English is kind of standard English. It's not, actually, because the BBC is very, very interested in diversity now. There's a very big agenda about that.
Well, yes, and still another question. What about that particular change that has come over the English language for the past, say 20 years? Well, in pronunciation, of course, time flows, and the English language becomes quite different from what it was, say, 50 years or 100 years ago. But at the same time, there is some standard English. And what about the deviations from standard English today on the, if you listen to the BBC English, are the deviations really substantial, or are they not?
I mean, I think, say, if you look at pronunciation, you'll hear a range of very different pronunciations on the BBC, because they do have a lot of presenters who say were born in countries in Africa or were born in India, so you would hear a lot of variation. Yes, you would hear some RP. Yes, you would do. But I mean, I think just after this lesson, just check what I say and just listen to the BBC World Service for half an hour, and you would hear a tremendous number of different accents. I was listening. I mean, I listen every day because I listen to it as a linguistic exercise, but I do think the news is quite. I do think it's got quite interesting news, and they do have a very wide variety of different accents. I don't think they're interested in standards. I think diversity is very important for them. I think they actually want that.
All right, thank you. And there's still another question, if you don't mind. Well, for the past, 30, 40 years, a lot of new people have arrived from elsewhere, and they have settled down in Britain, and they have already British, of course. And what about the newcomers to Britain? How are they taught the English language, and what does this have, and how they surmount them?
Well, a lot of it depends on the age. Obviously, they're quite young when they come, like children, basically, with their parents. I think I'll just pick up English like the rest of the population. If they're older, they're going to be learning English as a second language, and for various linguistic reasons, it's going to be more difficult to learn than their first language, and there'll be a lot of first language influence. But yeah, there are. I mean, I think this is quite common in England, that there are a substantial people whose English is their obviously second language. So people can speak English, but for them it's a second language. So they'll go to work and speak English, and then go home and speak their first language. And yes, in time, maybe their languages will have an influence on development of English. As I say, the second most common in the British Isles now is Polish. But obviously Polish is quite a different language from English. It's a Slavic language, but at the moment I can't see any influence of Polish on English, but who knows in the future.
All right, thank you. And still another question. What about the standard English pronunciation? Because previously, it was the rule, to consider, the pronunciation of those people who come from the southeast of England was closer to the norm, to the standard, to what is called standard English. What about today? Well, what is considered to be real standard from the point of view of pronunciation?
I don't think RP, for example, is associated with a particular region. I mean, for example, in London, which is in the southeast, there are a tremendous amount of different accents. Yeah, there will be some people speaking RP, but I don't think RP can be located. I mean, remember as well that when you talk about immigration, the vast majority of immigrants, whether they're from, I don't know, Pakistan, Ukraine, or Poland, will go to the southeast. So immigration has a much bigger impact on the southeast than it does, for example, on the northeast. So the southeast is the biggest melting pot in terms of accents.
All right, and what do you consider? Well, you have spoken about it, but in brief, what do you consider the most important challenges to modern standard English?
I'm not sure it's in terms of challenges. I think language, like Russian, I'm sure Russian is developing as well. I think there are challenges, for example, for assessments. Like, how would you test people's knowledge of English, given that there are different forms? So that is the biggest. That's the biggest practical challenge, really. I think assessments. Sorry, Nastya, I think you had a question, Miss Nastya.
Yes, I have. I think my question will be a bit off topic, but still I'd like to clarify this moment. As students, we are taught to stick to RP, but as far as I know, currently RP isn't quite popular with the native population of the United Kingdom. So, is it really? Does it really happen this way? And if yes, why?
Well, as I pointed out on that slide, Nastya, 5% of the only 5% maximum of the population speak RP. So I mean, you speak RP, for example, Nastya, but you might find a long time looking for people who do. I'm not sure it's a question of popularity, but it is associated maybe with kind of high class. I don't know, maybe a little bit snobbishness. Well, let me ask you, Nastya, why is it important for you?
Well, in my opinion, sticking to RP at the very beginning of learning English helps people to understand better the all the pronunciations. Not all, but the majority of pronunciations on the territory of the UK, in my opinion. So at the very beginning at the university, it really helped me to get what people were talking about.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's a very valid position. I mean that's a great point actually. That RP is simply very practical because it's a good starting point.
And honestly speaking, I do enjoy listening to people speaking RP.
Well, if you want to listen to RP, I'd probably recommend like maybe a down. I don't know, one of these prestige programs. I give them advice actually. It does exist though. I mean, don't think that RP is not reality. It is reality. People do speak. They do speak RP. Yeah.
By the way, I think that the majority of people learning foreign languages face the problem that it's difficult to sound like a native speaker. So, what would you recommend to train this aspect? In terms of English, naturally.
Do you want to sound like a native speaker?
Yes, I do. I do understand that sometimes it's difficult for a native speaker to get the native accent, but still, I'd like to master this process to sound more native.
Okay. Well, I mean, the good news is there is now a lot of artificial intelligence programs. I'm trying to find one that I use quite a lot, where someone pointed out to me last week. Actually, someone sent me an email about it. I'm just trying to find it, which is an RP kind of program. Which I can find it. I sent it to a couple of weeks ago. 1 second. Yeah, I'm just trying to find it actually. Try to find it. Right, just 1 second. Yeah, Elsa. I can't write in the chat box. Maybe if you send me an email, I can. There are programs. One is called Elsa, which are AI programs, which basically work. They work as like voice coaches. So I do think one of the great things, there's many negatives about artificial intelligence, but there are programs like Elsa, which you can use for voice training.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, okay. Okay, any more questions? Okay, well, thank you everyone. I know you've
Sorry, well, Wayne, just another question. There are so many dialects, there's so many accents. Well, concerning the last question that you were asked, and about, well, how to sound, how to learn to sound as a native speaker. They are native speakers, well, those who speak different dialects and accents. But, I know there are a lot of examples when people from different parts of the UK don't understand each other, particularly if they come from Yorkshire and they arrive in this, arrive in the south of England, and sometimes there are even scandals and the quarrels because they don't understand each other and they pronounce things quite differently. Well, what about that impact of dialects and accents on standard English? What do you call them standard English? If there are so many dialects and accents, what do you call really standard English? Is it RP, as the previous speaker said?
Well, I mean, I think as Nastya said, I think RP, yes, would be the standard because people recognise it and it is codified. So yes, it is a standard in that sense. It's not a standard as in it's the best or the common, but it does represent the standard, yes, because it's codified, yeah. Okay, any other questions?
And what about this misunderstanding that sometimes exists between different groups of people who come from different parts of the United Kingdom? Well, how do you refer it to it from the point of view of standard English? How do you understand this? Well, the diversity that exists in the United Kingdom as compared to standard English. Well, what is the relationship?
I think people accept that there are different accents. I mean, there are a lot of different accents in England. People accept that. Yes, people might make jokes about it, but I think people are very skilled at listening to different accents. So people have a lot of experience of communicating with people differently. I think that's the key.
And still another point, probably. Well, what do you think about the American accent? Because there are TV sets in every house in the United Kingdom, and of course they very often watch American films and they listen to American speaking. And to what degree do you think it has an impact on standard English?
I don't think. I mean, I think obviously American English has a much bigger influence because America is just kind of stronger politically, economically, whatever. But there are different accents in the USA. I've not been to the USA, but there are different accents in the USA as well. So it's a complex. I think it's just another accent, really, out of many different accents around the world. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Well, are there any other questions that you would like to ask Wayne or Emma? Anybody? Well, Wayne, I think that is the end of our talk today. And thank you very much. We are very grateful for your, this talk has been recorded.
Well, the last question for the day, may I ask?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you may. Of course, well, I think they will permit it.
I'm going to become an interpreter, and in this case, I'd like to know what accent it's better for me. Not accent, but the manner of speaking is better for me to stick to the American one or the British one in these terms. Because the American accent is gaining popularity at the moment, but still I think that it is easier for people to understand the British one. As the native speaker, could you clarify this moment in your opinion?
I mean, difficult one, really. I mean, I guess it's about quantity, really. I mean, there are more people around the world who are trained in American accent, so possibly that is a more common accent and a kind of I mean, the only reason that English is a global language, of course, is because of the USA. So probably that accent. Yeah, I mean, I guess there are some feature stations which are easier as well. Possibly that is a better model. But I think if you're an interpreter, I think the main criterion is the clarity and just that skill of synchronic translation, interpreting or whatever. Yeah. So I guess American. That's my personal view.
Well, I see. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Good luck. Good luck.
Thank you very much indeed. That's the end of the talk, and thank you very much, Wayne,
Have a good day, everyone.
for coming and having a talk with us. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. It was really a brilliant opportunity to listen to you.
I thank all those who have arrived to our talk and who are really have been asking questions. Thank you and goodbye at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.